I was just about to turn off the light when the knock came. Not a casual knock. Not the kind a neighbor gives when they've forgotten their keys. This one was sharp. Urgent. The kind that doesn't belong at midnight unless something has gone terribly wrong. My chest tightened. For a split second, I thought maybe there'd been an accident. Maybe the police. Maybe someone was hurt. But when I opened the door, none of that stood there. She did. Claire. My 45-year-old neighbor. She was wrapped in a thin sweater over a nightgown, her hair slightly damp from the mist outside. The porch light caught the uncertainty in her eyes. She looked like someone who had debated knocking for several minutes and still wasn't sure she should be there. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "My power went out." I didn't know who else to ask. It wasn't really about the electricity. I knew that immediately. I'm Daniel. 48. Divorced for almost 10 years. Living alone in a house that looks steady from the outside but echoes when the TV turns off. I work at a construction supply company. Pay my bills. Keep the lawn trimmed. Smile at neighbors. But inside? Inside has been quiet for a long time. You learn to live with silence. You tell yourself you prefer it. Until midnight knocks on your door. Of course, I said too quickly. "Let me grab a flashlight." She stepped inside while I reached for it. She stood near the door like she didn't want to take up too much space. Like she wasn't used to asking for help. We walked across the lawn together, the air cool and damp. She kept her arms folded tightly around herself. Not from the cold, I think. Inside her house, the breaker had simply tripped. Nothing dramatic. I flipped the switch. The lights came back instantly. But she didn't move. She stayed close. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence in the small utility room. When the light flickered back on, she let out a slow breath. The kind of breath that comes from somewhere deeper than inconvenience. "Thank you," she said. And in her eyes, I saw something heavier than darkness. We ended up back in my kitchen. I made tea. She sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug though it was too hot to drink. The clock ticked on the wall. The kind of sound that usually feels loud when two people don't know what to say. But we weren't strangers. Not really. She'd lost her husband 3 years ago. Everyone knew that. Suburbs have a way of spreading grief like gossip. I'd seen her mow the lawn alone. Carry groceries alone. Sit on her porch alone. "I've been alone a while," she admitted softly. "Sometimes it just feels heavier at night." I nodded. Because I understood that better than I wanted to. We didn't talk about anything dramatic. Just small things. The streetlights. The weather turning colder. How autumn makes everything feel nostalgic whether you want it to or not. But beneath those small words was something bigger. Two people who had been carrying silence for too long. When she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "I don't usually bother people," she said. "But tonight, I just couldn't sit there in the dark anymore." And then she was gone. But something wasn't. The next morning, I told myself it meant nothing. A trip breaker. A cup of tea. That's it. Except it wasn't. At the mailbox, she introduced herself properly. Claire Morgan. The sunlight caught strands of silver in her dark hair. Not old. Not fragile. Just real. A woman who had lived through something that changed her. I told her my name. Though she already knew it. That's how suburbs work. People know your story before you tell it. It didn't take long for others to notice. Old Mrs. Williams across the street watched like a private investigator with lace curtains. Her brother Mark started appearing more often. Protective. Suspicious. One afternoon he confronted me outside the hardware store. "She's vulnerable," he said. "She's an adult," I replied. His jaw tightened. She doesn't need someone complicating her life. The implication hung heavy between us. I didn't argue further. But I didn't back down either. Claire came over again a few nights later. No broken lights this time. No excuses. She stood in my living room, hands trembling slightly. Every time I try to move forward, she said, someone reminds me I'm supposed to stay frozen. Her voice cracked. Like loving again would erase him. I didn't rush toward her. I didn't try to be a hero. I just stood close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. Her hand brushed mine. And neither of us pulled away. That small contact felt louder than any declaration. The whispers grew louder. Neighbors talked. Mark glared. Curtains shifted. But something inside her was shifting too. And inside me. I had spent years believing my story had already peaked. That the rest was maintenance. Routine. Survival. But she changed that. Not with grand gestures. With presence. With honesty. With the way she said my name like it belonged somewhere new. The night it truly changed, there was no storm. Just another midnight. Another knock. When I opened the door, Claire stood there steady this time. I'm tired of being told who I am, she said. By my brother. By the neighbors. By the past. She stepped inside. I'm scared, she admitted. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life pretending I don't want more. She came closer. When I'm here, she whispered, I don't feel like a widow. I just feel like a woman. My heart pounded. You don't have to start again alone, I said. She reached for my hand. And this time, we didn't hesitate. Our fingers intertwined naturally, like they'd been waiting. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. That touch carried grief. Fear. Hope. And something stronger than the whispers outside. The next morning, she walked to my porch in broad daylight. No hiding. No apology. We drank coffee while Mrs. Williams peeked through her curtains. While Mark's truck sat in her driveway like a warning. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was living quietly to avoid trouble. I felt alive. Claire laughed at something I said. A real laugh. Unfiltered. And I realized something simple but powerful. It wasn't the midnight knock that changed my life. It was what came after. The choice to stop living frozen. The courage to let someone see you again. The decision to believe that grief doesn't have to be the final chapter. When she left that morning, she touched my shoulder gently. I'll see you tonight, she said. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the silence. Because I knew it wouldn't stay empty anymore. And sometimes, all it takes is 10 minutes at midnight. To remind you that life isn't finished with you yet.